Welcome back. This is Washington Watch. So good to have you with us. As I mentioned at the top of the program, today is Flag Day. Now, what is Flag Day? Well, this day marks the actions by the Second Continental Congress on this very day in 1777 to pass a resolution adopting a national flag that symbolized the united effort for ordered liberty and freedom. It kind of brought all of the colonies together. Well, on this day in 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower signed the bill into law, adding the words "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. He chose this day because of its significance. Now, the backstory to that addition to the pledge is this. In February of that year, President Eisenhower was in a church service at the New York Avenue Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., where the Reverend George Dougherty delivered a sermon on the subject of the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, President Eisenhower was sitting right there in the front row. The sermon was about the absence of the words "under God." Now, America was locked in a Cold War with Russia, and they felt like some bold declaration was needed to show that there was a difference between America and the atheistic communist. And that was the point of the sermon that morning. Well, 3 days after that sermon, a bill was introduced in Congress to add the words "under God." And on Flag Day, in 1954, Eisenhower signed the bill into law, and this is what he said. "From this day forward, millions of school children will daily proclaim the dedication of our nation and our people to the Almighty," end quote. Now, how can we escape the question, if America's school children had continued to proclaim a devotion to God, unhindered by the court and the anti-Christian activists in this country, might children still be safe in our classrooms rather than being targeted with drag queen story hours? You see, I think it's time once again for pulpits all across the land to call Christian Americans to return to being one nation under God and living that out each and every day. All right, before I bring in Meg Kilgannon, I want to provide you with a quick legislative update. The House this week will be considering H.R. 2543. Now, there's not a piece of legislation that the Democrats don't introduce and try to pass that has some kind of left-wing agenda in it. Well, the Financial Services Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Economic Justice Act, that should tell you all you need to know. Well, it includes the LGBTQ Business Equal Credit Enforcement and Investment Act that passed last Congress, and it has even worse language that redefines sex. Joining me now to give us more information on this and what you can do is Travis Weber, FRC's Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs. Travis, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, so what does H.R. 2543 do?
Yeah, so as is apparent from the name, it basically injects ideology on social perspectives that the Democrat and modern left of the Democratic Party wish to offer into a lot of what they do. It injects their own perspective and ideology on these matters into our financial system. The bill incorporates several other pieces of legislation into the current text of H.R. 2543. Among those, it redefines sex non-discrimination in federal law in some provisions of this current form of the bill to include sexual orientation and gender identity. This will have the effect, among other things, this will have the effect of marginalizing women, entrepreneurs who the federal law has currently noted deserve and get special categorical protections in terms of the way the federal law incentivizing financial growth treats them. But it would marginalize them by injecting a gender identity into those provisions of law. To say nothing of the other areas of federal law, it would modify, including provisions that overlap with what the Equality Act sought to do. Now, we are familiar with the Equality Act and the damage that would bring to federal statute in a number of areas, including religious freedom implications. This bill has overlap with that, and so it's significant that people know that it's bad. That the Democrats in the House are trying to push it into a vote tomorrow in the House of Representatives.
All right, folks, that's H.R. 2543, and get something to write with because I'm going to give you the House switchboard number in just a moment so you can make a phone call to your member of Congress. But Travis, so that folks understand how the process kind of works here in Washington, it's the proverbial nose of the camel under the tent. It is in one area of law that people might not pay any attention to because this is financial service, this is financial issues. Why does this have to do with family, religious freedom? Well, once they redefine in one area of federal law, human sexuality, gender, or whatever, then they're able to use that to springboard to change the definitions elsewhere.
That's right. And here you see an attempt to put just enough in federal law to that they will try to use the next time they pass a related bill, and they'll point to this as a reference. They'll say, well, it's already in that area of law. Just use that definition or that understanding in federal policy, and they'll use it to spread elsewhere. They could not get the Equality Act passed as a whole piece of legislation. This, I believe, is part of an attempt to pass the Equality Act piecemeal by inserting it into other bills. And we'll note that some of the reporting requirements in this law include matters of sexuality, do not include categories the law has protected for a long time, such as Native American or veteran-owned businesses. So those are excluded, what are expressly in the law. But now the Democrats leading the House want to inject sexual ideology into the way our financial system is incentivized and exclusion of those who the law actually does protect. It's important that people know about this bill.
It is, and important that they speak out about it because you even have to face this idea. Well, you're intolerant, or you this or that. Look, I think we just have to draw bright, bold lines, red lines, that say we're not going to allow them to push past this because this reminds me of the debate we had probably 15, 16 years ago over hate crimes, where they interjected it into just one small area. And then it just blossomed. It mushroomed into a weapon that has been used against conservatives and people of faith all across this country. So the switchboard number for the House of Representatives, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121, and it's H.R. 2543. And Travis, it's likely to be voted on this week, right?
Yeah, we're expecting a vote tomorrow, Tony. And so if people can call their representatives today, tell them they oppose this bill and they should oppose it as no business in federal law, their members need to hear from them today.
All right. Travis Weber, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.